Gentlemen and tarnished of all ages, do you enjoy watching your enemy's health bar slowly tick down while you just sneer at them from a distance like an angsty teenage anime antagonist? Well, what if while doing so, you can also just beat your enemy to death even faster without any issue? Well, today I have a real fun build for you all centered around the weapon Gargoyle's Blackblade and its signature unique skill, Corpse Wax Cutter. The weapon itself is really strong if you're properly statted into the scaling. Its overall AR is extremely high, and so the weapon hits are exceptionally meaty, even though that's not really the focus of today's build at all. It's more just a side bonus. The general focus is the weapon skill itself, Corpse Wax Cutter. This skill, when used, fires out in a line in front of you that covers quite a bit of fair distance, and when it hits an enemy, it will both do a fairly large chunk of damage and apply the Black Flame debuff to them, which is a dot that does max health percentage damage for 2 seconds after the hit connects, providing a good amount of extra bonus damage that scales with the difficulty of the enemy that you're fighting. It's worth noting, of course, that the skill was buffed in patch 1.07 as well, reducing its FP consumption to 16, increasing the motion speed, range, and speed of the attack itself, as well as adding damage detection to the weapon swing part of the Ash itself, which means that if you use this in melee range, you get a weapon hit, the Ash of War's base damage, and then also the health percentage damage over time effect as well, making it quite potent in that range. On top of this, playing around with the theme and also taking advantage of our attribute split, we are using the Scarlet Aeonia Incantation, mostly as an opener, and it does pretty good damage, but the main reason to use this is its application of the Scarlet Rot debuff. One use of this well-timed and well-positioned will apply Scarlet Rot to most enemies, but there isn't a single enemy or boss in the game that can take 2 hits of this incantation without getting the debuff.
Here's a pretty flower.
Once your enemy has Scarlet Rot, they'll just be ticking for loads of damage constantly and consistently, so putting that together with your weapon skill is quite fun. On top of this, the spell itself was also buffed in patch 1.07 to make it significantly stronger, thus why it functions so well within this build. It was given reduced FP cost, increased attack power, poise damage, and stamina attack power against guarding enemies, and the actual landing of the attack has longer range and decreased recovery time too, and they also made the poise increase of the spell happen earlier in the animation, which makes it much safer to trade with in pretty much any situation. This combination of spell and weapon is extremely strong, so let's make something special with it, shall we? Before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the build itself, how good is this in PvP then? It is focused around doing PvE content, but to put it simply, Scarlet Rot is extremely powerful against most players. If you can get the debuff applied to them, you just have to wait out the timer for them to die while dodging their attacks. Smart people will clear Scarlet Rot, as you can do that with simply an item, but most people in general PvP just don't think that far ahead. They'd rather try to just murder you before the time runs out. Aside from that, Corpse Wax Cutter is pretty good. It is less predictable than many weapons because most people just don't recognize the Gargoyle's Blackblade before you use the skill, and it only takes a couple of ashes and a weapon hit to kill most players. So that, combined with the ability to use Scarlet Aeonia, makes it pretty good in PvP. Not to mention that this build runs 80 Faith with a high scaling seal, so there's really nothing to stop you from using any offensive incantation that you please as well. As for how the build works then, what all comes together to make it what it is, of course we start off with the weapon itself, the Gargoyle's Blackblade. And to get this for yourself, you have to defeat the Gargoyle boss located right outside of the Bestial Sanctum in Northeast Caelid. Then we have our seal for casting incantations, and the best one hands down for this setup is the Erdtree seal. This has exceptional faith scaling, which makes it an easy choice. To get this, you just have to head to this specific prison cell located under the Prison Town Church site of Grace in Volcano Manor. Next up is our armor, and this is pretty much all up to fashion however you please, but if you want to ease up the attribute requirements of the build, there are various faith boosting helmets that you can use to let you put more attributes elsewhere. Then we move on to our talismans, of course. First up is the absolute classic that is the Shard of Alexander. This boosts all weapon skill damage by 15%, which is of course quite a noticeable amount, and that's why this talisman is pretty much standard in any weapon skill based build. If you still don't have this for some reason, you get it from doing a 3-stage quest. First find Alexander in the desert where you fight Radon, then find him again in the lava fields just southwest of the Seethwater Terminus site of Grace on Mount Gelmir, then find and talk to him one last time, just a brief walk from the Dragon Temple lift site of Grace in crumbling Farum Azula. Second up we have the Phlox Canvas Talisman. This boosts all incantation damage by 8%, of course affecting Scarlet Aeonia and any other offensive incantation that you may choose to add to this build. To get this one, once you have completed the Millicent questline one way or the other, you simply have to head to Gary's shack in the middle of Caelid and, well, just kill the old man in the chair. Don't worry, he's secretly a bug, so it's not murder, just pest control.
I'm not a murderer!
After that, we have the Sacred Scorpion Charm Talisman. This boosts all holy damage done by 8% at the cost of some of your damage negation. It's pretty powerful, so for the most part, the benefits outweigh the costs on this one, given that it buffs our weapon skill, which is our main damage source. To get this one for yourself, you must simply defeat the NPC invader that spawns outside of the Smoldering Church area on the northwest edge of the Caelid region. Then in our final slot, you have a choice, either the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman or the Erdtree's Favor +2. Both of these serve to make you a bit tankier, but the Erdtree Talisman is less tankiness, but also an increase to both max stamina and equip load, so the choice is up to you there. For PvP purposes though, you can also just choose to run both of these talismans and replace the Sacred Scorpion Charm, as that one is definitely less good in PvP. Then let's move on down to our Flask of Wondrous Physic, and the obvious first choice here is the Holy Shrouding Crack tier, which boosts all holy damage by 20% for 3 minutes after you drink it. And the second slot here is somewhat of a personal choice. The best one really is probably the Faith Knot Crystal tier, which boosts Faith by 10 while active, and so you can change your stats to be 70 Faith instead of 80, and then just use this so you're at full power for boss fights and have more stats to put into other attributes and make the build just a little bit more comfortable for yourself. With that, all that's left are our incantations, and the three that I most recommend are quite simple. First up is Golden Vow. You'll see this in just about any build ever made because it is a buff for 15% damage increase on all types of damage and 10% damage reduction for the 80-second duration, making it incredibly strong no matter what you do. To get this one, go to the Corpse Stench Shack on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir. Next up is another buff, but not the usual second one. This time it's Howl of Shabiri. This incantation has a nice secondary effect of buffing all damage that you do by 25% for 40 seconds at the cost of also increasing damage taken by 30% for the same amount of time. The main reason that we use this is because Flame Grant Me Strength, the usual incantation, doesn't actually buff our weapon skill as it is purely holy damage based, and so it would be sort of a waste to use, at least in the grand scheme of things. Then finally, of course, is Scarlet Aeonia itself, which I've already waxed lyrical about why it's good and why it's in the build right now. And that's everything that you actually want to collect and equip, all the little bits. So then what are the attributes that you want to aim for in this build? First up, we want to hit 80 Faith, as everything we deal damage with scales with Faith, and then you want to get a nice comfortable amount of Vigor as well, with 60 always being my personal recommendation. You need 18 Strength to wield the weapon effectively, and then you want enough Endurance to have medium roll with a decently tanky armor set, up to your fashion choices. Everything else from there can go directly into Mind to let you cast more Rotting Flowers and weapon skills, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And that just about covers it then, everyone. A beautifully synergistic build that absolutely tears apart bosses, players, and everything in between, all based around damage over time above all else, just because it's fun to sit there dodging and staring into your enemy's eyes when they're low health, knowing that they have mere seconds to live and you don't even have to lift a finger. I hope you've enjoyed this build, and let us know down in the comments if there are any other weapons or skills that you think would make a fun playstyle. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.